had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving. I had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Worth Loving podcast. I am your host, Keana W. Mitchell, and I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So whether you're listening while you're getting ready for your day, taking a moment to yourself, or just settling into your evening routine, I want you, as I always say, to take a deep breath and allow yourself to arrive fully into space. This podcast is your weekly reminder that healing is possible, that clarity is available, and that you deserve relationships that honor your worth. Today, we are diving into a topic that many people struggle with silently, and that is, why do I keep attracting toxic partners? And how do I finally break that cycle? So if you have ever found yourself in a relationship that you felt drained, you felt it was confusing or emotionally unstable, or if you just noticed that your partners tend to have similar unhealthy traits, you are not alone. Research shows that unresolved attachment wounds and early relational experiences often shape who we're drawn to and how we show up in relationships. These patterns aren't a sign that something's wrong with you. They're simply signals pointing to areas that need healing, compassion, and understanding. So my goal today is not to shame you or make you feel like you failed. Instead, I want to help you understand the deeper emotional and psychological roots behind these patterns so you can begin choosing healthy relationships that feel steady, mutual, and emotionally safe. Because once again, it's important for you to understand what's going on. Because if you don't know why you're doing the same things over and over, you can't change it. Once you understand why you're drawn to certain dynamics, you can then have the power to choose differently. And that's where real transformation begins. But before we get into this week's episode of the podcast, let's take a look at last week's episode of the podcast. Last week on the podcast, we talked about whether emotional intimacy or physical intimacy was better when it comes to creating a stronger bond in your relationship or even a healthier bond in your relationship. We talked about how emotional intimacy is built through safety, responsiveness, and vulnerability, the qualities that help us feel truly seen, valued, and understood. We talked about how, according to Dr. Sue Johnson, who's a leading researcher in attachment and bonding, that she emphasizes that emotional connection is the foundation of a secure, lasting relationship. It is what allows two people to build trust, communicate openly, and navigate conflict with compassion. We also talked about how physical intimacy, while meaningful and very important, can sometimes cause a false sense of closeness, especially when you experience that before you experience emotional intimacy. And that's because whenever we experience physical touch, our bodies release oxytocin, a bonding chemical that makes us feel connected even when emotional intimacy hasn't been established. This is why some relationships feel intense early on, even though the emotional foundation is shaky or non-existent. One of the biggest takeaways from last week's episode was the idea that many people confuse intimacy with intensity. So when emotional intimacy feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable, especially for those with attachment wounds, how physical chemistry can feel like the primary indicator of connection. But chemistry alone doesn't create a healthy, sustainable love or relationship. And that's what we talked about. We had a lot of other good things in there. So guys, if you missed last week's episode of the podcast, I strongly and highly encourage you to go back and listen to it whenever you have a chance so that you can understand this whole thing between emotional intimacy, which we found out in the episode was needed, versus chemistry, physical chemistry, which is needed. But I do want to say, if you want a longer lasting relationship, it's important to establish that emotional intimacy first. So go ahead, listen to last week's episode of the podcast, and I hope it helps you understand and be able to connect it with this week's episode when we talk about how to stop attracting toxic partners. So let's talk about why this pattern shows up in the first place. One of the most important things to understand is that we don't choose partners based on what's healthy. We choose based on what's familiar because that's what we're used to. The nervous system is wired to recognize patterns, even when these patterns are painful. Freud described this as repetition compulsion, the unconscious pull to recreate unresolved emotional wounds in an attempt to master them. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk later expands on this idea, explaining that trauma wires the nervous system to seek out emotional environments that mirror early experiences, even if those environments are harmful. Attachment styles also play a major role. According to Ainsworth and later researchers like McKilfer and Schaefer, the way we bond with a caregiver shapes how we bond with other people, including romantic partners. So you have had an anxious attachment style, you may feel drawn to emotionally unavailable partners because they activate your fear of abandonment, a feeling your nervous system recognizes. If you have an avoidant attachment style, you may choose partners who confirm your belief that closeness is unsafe and overwhelming. If you have a disorganized attachment style, you may find yourself oscillating between craving connection and fearing it. Low self worth also plays a significant role. When your sense of self worth has been shaped by your trauma, criticism, or emotional neglect, you may tolerate behaviors that violate your emotional needs. Dr. Judith Herman notes that trauma survivors often normalize chaos because it mirrors their early environment. And finally, many people confuse intensity with love, which is what we talked about last week, right? Dr. Patrick Keynes explains that the cycle of highs and lows, affection followed by withdrawal, creates powerful emotional bonds that feel like love but are actually trauma responses. So, just understanding these dynamics is the first step toward breaking free of toxic partners. Now that we've explored why these patterns form, let's talk about how they show up. Recognizing the signs is essential because awareness gives you the power to choose differently. One of the clearest indicators that you're attracting toxic partners is that you feel anxious, confused, or emotionally unstable more often than you feel safe. Healthy relationships create a sense of calm and predictability, not chaos. Another sign is that you find yourself over-functioning. You may be the one doing all the emotional labor, initiating conversations, repairing conflicts, or trying to quote unquote fix the relationship while the other person remains distant or inconsistent. This imbalance often reflects deeper attachment wounds and a belief that you must earn love through effort. You may also notice that you ignore red flags because the connection feels intense. That intensity can feel intoxicating, especially if you never experienced steady, secure love. But intensity is not the same as intimacy. Another sign is feeling responsible for the other person's emotions. If you find yourself walking on eggshells, trying to manage their reactions, or sacrificing your needs to keep the peace, that's a sign of emotional enmeshment, not healthy connection. And finally, you may lose your sense of self in a relationship. You might abandon your boundaries, silence your need, or shrink parts of yourself to maintain that connection. Dr. John Gottman's research shows that emotional unpredictability and inconsistency are major predictors of relationship instability. If these signs resonate with you, it doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that you're becoming aware. So, how do we stop attracting toxic partners? Breaking this cycle is absolutely possible, and it all begins with building emotional intimacy with yourself. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion shows that when we treat ourselves with kindness, we naturally raise our standards for how others treat us. Self-awareness helps you recognize your patterns, understand your triggers, and identify the emotional needs you've been trying to meet through relationships. Strengthening your boundaries is another essential step. Boundaries are not walls. They are expressions of self-worth. They help you protect your emotional space and choose relationships that align with your values. When you set boundaries, you teach others how to treat you, and you teach yourself what you deserve. Rewiring your nervous system is also key. In polyvagal theory, it teaches us that the nervous system responds to cues of safety. So when you slow down the pace of relationships, you give yourself time to discern compatibility instead of getting swept up in the chemistry. You learn to recognize the difference between excellence, excitement, and anxiety, between intensity and connection. And when I say excellence, I'm just talking about how someone treats you, how you want to be treated. what you expect out of her partner, right? What the kind of treatment you expect out of a partner. So redefining what attachment means is another powerful shift. Attachment isn't just butterflies. It's also peace, consistency, and emotional availability. Healthy love often feels steady, not overwhelming. So when you begin valuing emotional safety over emotional intensity, your relationship landscape changes. By default, it's just going to change. And finally, healing your attachment wound is essential. Dr. Daniel Siegel found that attachment styles can change through corrective emotional experiences like therapy, coaching, and internal healing. You are not stuck with the patterns you learned. You can absolutely move forward towards secure attachment, one choice at a time. As you begin healing and shifting your patterns, it's important to know what healthy love actually looks like. One of the biggest green flags is consistent communication. Healthy partners don't leave you guessing. They show up, follow through, and communicate openly. Another green flag is respect for your boundaries. A healthy partner doesn't push past your limits or make you feel guilty for having needs. Instead, they honor your emotional space and support your growth. Emotional availability is another essential quality. A healthy partner is willing to share their feelings, listen to yours, and encourage meaningful conversations. They don't shut down, withdraw, or punish you for expressing yourself. Accountability is another green flag. Healthy partners take responsibility for their actions. They apologize when necessary, repair ruptures, and show a willingness to grow. You'll also notice mutual effort. Healthy partners are reciprocal. Both people invest, both people care, and both people equally show up. Finally, the connection feels steady, not chaotic. Healthy love doesn't feel like a roller coaster, it feels like a rhythm, each grounded and emotionally safe. You feel like you can be yourself without fear or judgment of abandonment. You also feel like you're not going to be abandoned for having opinions. When you begin to recognize these green flags, you start to understand what you truly deserve. And the more you heal, the more naturally you'll gravitate toward partners who embody these qualities. The song we're going to listen to today is by our podcast artist, Emery Rose, and it is called Tired of Playing Games. So here's the song, Tired of Playing Games, by our podcast artist, Emery Rose.
You told me the other day you wanted to walk away. Every time we argue, you give me reasons why you don't wanna stay. I'm tired of being emotional, ups and downs. It's slowly tearing me down. I can't go on this way. Something has to change. These thoughts are running through my head, and I don't know what I should do. I'm afraid to commit to you. I don't know what to think about you. These thoughts are running through my head, and I don't know what I should do. I'm afraid to commit to you. I don't know what to think about you. I'm so tired of playing games. Playing games. 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 I don't know what you want to hear from me. I told you sorry a million times for all the things you said I've done to you, but why am I always wrong? And you get to act like you're right. These thoughts are running through my head, and I don't know what I should do. I'm afraid to commit to you. I don't know what to think about you. These thoughts are running through my head, and I don't know what I should do. I'm afraid to commit to you. I don't know what to think about you. I'm so tired of playing games. Playing games. 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 You tell me it's not you, and that the problem is me. All you seem to do
episode, I want you to remember something very important. You are not doomed to repeat the same relationship patterns. The fact that you're here, listening, and learning and reflecting means that you are already breaking the cycle. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen through awareness, compassion, and intentional choices. You deserve relationships that feel steady, mutual, and emotionally safe. You deserve partners who honor your boundaries, respect your needs, and meet you with consistency. And most importantly, you deserve to feel loved without having to sacrifice your sense of self. In today's episode, we talked about that. So if it resonated with you, I encourage you to take a moment this week to reflect on your patterns with compassion, not shame. Healing begins with understanding, and understanding leads to transformation. Next week, we're going to talk about another powerful topic that I know will support your journey toward healing and toward a healthier, more fulfilling relationship. And I can't wait to share it with you. But for today, thank you so much for being here, for doing this work, and for choosing relationships that reflect your healing. I'll see you next week. And until then, have an amazing day and an awesome weekend. Bye-bye.
I had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving. I had to realize